The restaurant glittered with crystal chandeliers and the quiet hum of dangerous men. At table 7 sat Viktor Petrov, the most feared mafia boss in the city, a man whose silence carried more weight than other men's threats. Near the bar, a small waitress named Lina Hartwell froze mid-step when she heard a whisper slip through the air in Russian. "Poison in his dish. Make it slow." Her blood turned to ice. The kitchen door swung shut. No one else in that gilded room understood those words except her. With trembling hands and a hammering heart, she rushed to his table and whispered urgently, "Don't eat that." For a heartbeat, time itself seemed to hold its breath. The boss who trusted no one now had to make an impossible choice: believe a trembling stranger who appeared from nowhere, or die trusting the people he'd surrounded himself with for years. Rain hammered against the tall windows of Caviar and Steel, the most exclusive Russian-Italian fusion restaurant in the city. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across marble floors and velvet booths. The midnight crowd was thin, but select politicians, art dealers, and men whose business cards listed occupations that didn't quite exist. At table 7, Viktor Petrov sat like a monument carved from granite and indifference. Mid-40s, clean-shaven, with steel-gray eyes that never stopped calculating. His charcoal suit was impeccable, his movements economical. 2 bodyguards flanked the table: Dmitri, built like a concrete pillar, and Alexei, lean and watchful as a hunting dog. They spoke in low murmurs about shipment routes and compromised officials, while Viktor studied the menu with the same intensity other men reserved for battle plans. Near the bar, Lina Hartwell polished wine glasses with mechanical precision. 21 years old, barely 5 feet tall, with mousy brown hair pulled into a tight bun, and eyes that always seemed too large for her face. She'd been working at Caviar and Steel for 3 months, long enough to recognize the dangerous ones, smart enough to stay invisible. The tips were good, the questions were few. That was all she needed. She'd learned to move like smoke through the dining room, refilling water glasses and clearing plates without drawing attention. Invisibility was survival. Her manager, Gerald Finch, a nervous man with perpetually damp hands, preferred waitstaff who didn't make eye contact with the clientele. Ghosts who serve, he called them. Tonight felt different. The air held a charge, like static before lightning. 2 men sat at the far end of the bar, nursing vodka neat. She'd noticed them when they arrived late 30s. Military posture, expensive watches that didn't match their off-the-rack suits. One had a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. The other wore his hair in a severe buzz cut that revealed a tattoo creeping up his neck. They spoke quietly, heads bent together. Lina approached to offer refills, her practiced smile in place. That's when she heard it. Russian. Not the polished Moscow Russian of diplomats, or the casual slang of Brooklyn emigres. This was clipped, precise military cadence, with a Kirov dialect that dragged certain vowels like anchors. Her blood recognized it before her mind did. Яд в его блюде. Сделай это медленно. Poison in his dish. Make it slow. The glass in her hand nearly slipped. She caught it, knuckles white, pulse roaring in her ears. The man with the neck tattoo glanced at her cold, assessing. She forced herself to smile, to nod, to pour. Her hands shook so badly vodka splashed on the counter. Она понимает? Does she understand? Buzzcut asked, eyes narrowing. Нет. Посмотри на нее, она американка. No. Look at her, she's American. Neck tattoo dismissed her with a wave. Lina's grandmother had fled Kirov in 1994, arriving in Boston with 2 suitcases and a 9-year-old daughter. Lina had grown up in a household where Russian was the language of bedtime stories and whispered warnings. She understood every word. She set down the bottle with exaggerated care, mumbled something about checking the kitchen, and walked away. Not too fast, not too slow. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but running would confirm their suspicion. Behind her, one of them laughed. Когда? When? 10 минут. Блюдо уже готово. 10 minutes. The dish is already prepared. Table 7. The boss at table 7. Viktor Petrov. She'd heard the name whispered by kitchen staff, seen the way Gerald Finch practically bowed when seating him. A man who owned half the waterfront and the other half of City Hall. A man who made people disappear. She reached the service station, pressed her back against the wall, and tried to think. Call the police? They'd arrive after it was too late if they arrived at all. Warn the manager? Gerald would panic, make a scene, and she'd be the first one blamed when the poison was discovered. Tell the bodyguards? They might be in on it. 10 minutes. Her brother's face flashed in her memory. Nikolai, 23 years old, kneeling in a Moscow alley with a gun to his head because he'd witnessed something he shouldn't have. She'd been hiding behind a dumpster, 12 years old, hands clamped over her mouth to keep from screaming. She'd done nothing then. Watched him die. Ran. Not again. Lina grabbed a wine bottle, expensive Bordeaux she couldn't pronounce, and walked toward table 7. Her legs felt disconnected from her body, her vision tunneling. Dmitri, the massive bodyguard, tracked her approach with flat eyes. She smiled, lifted the bottle as if to offer a refill. 3 feet from the table, she let it slip. The bottle exploded against marble in a crimson burst. Crystal and wine sprayed across the floor. The dining room went silent. "I'm so sorry." Lina dropped to her knees, fumbling with glass shards, inching closer to Viktor's chair. "I'm so clumsy, Viktor's gaze locked onto her. Up close, his eyes were the color of winter sea, gray-blue and fathomless. He didn't blink. She leaned in, voice barely a whisper. "Don't eat that." His hand, which had been reaching for his fork, froze mid-air. "What did you say?" "The food. It's poisoned. I heard them at the bar. In Russian. Military dialect. Kirov. They said, 'Make it slow. Please.'" Dmitri's hand moved to his jacket, but Viktor raised one finger. The bodyguard froze. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Rain lashed the windows. Somewhere in the kitchen, a timer chimed. Viktor studied her face with an intensity that made her feel transparent. She could see him cataloging details: her accent, her shaking hands, the desperation in her eyes, calculating probabilities. Trust was a luxury men like him couldn't afford. Finally, he spoke, voice quiet as falling snow. "Everyone out." It wasn't loud, but it carried. Dmitri and Alexei moved immediately, herding the few remaining diners toward the exit. Gerald Finch started to protest, saw Viktor's expression, and swallowed his words. Within 90 seconds, the restaurant was empty except for Viktor, his men, and Lina, still kneeling in broken glass and wine. Viktor pushed his plate away. "Explain." Lina's knees ached from kneeling on glass. She could feel blood seeping through her stockings, warm and sticky. Viktor Petrov watched her with the patience of a man who'd interrogated hundreds and could wait hours for truth. "There are 2 men at the bar," she began, voice shaking. "Dark suits, military bearing. One has a neck tattoo. They were speaking Russian, not casual, but precise. Kirov dialect. They said, 'Poison in your dish, make it slow. 10 minutes. The dish was already prepared." Alexei, the lean bodyguard, moved toward the bar. It was empty. The 2 men had vanished. "They're gone," Alexei reported, gun drawn. "Back exit is open. They left 30 seconds ago." Viktor's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture, a coiling tension, like a snake preparing to strike. He turned back to Lina. "You speak Russian." It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. "My grandmother was from Kirov. She raised me. And you recognize the dialect specifically?" "Yes, it's distinctive. The vowels, the phrasing. My grandmother's friends all spoke that way." Viktor picked up his fork, speared a piece of the grilled sturgeon on his plate, and held it out to her. "Prove it. Eat." The room tilted. Lina stared at the fork, at the perfectly seared fish glistening with herb butter, and felt her stomach revolt. I can't. You claim it's poisoned. If you're telling the truth, you'll refuse. If you're lying, if you planted this yourself as some elaborate scheme, you'll eat it to maintain the deception." His voice was clinical, detached. "So, eat." Dmitri moved closer, hand on his weapon. The implicit threat was clear. Refuse, and die as a suspected assassin. Eat, and die from poison. There was no third option. Lina's hands trembled so violently she could barely reach for the fork. This was it. This was how she died, not because she'd stayed silent like with Nikolai, but because she'd spoken. The universe's cruel joke. She took the fork, brought it to her lips. The smell of butter and lemon made her gag. Tears streamed down her face. "Please," she whispered. "I'm telling the truth. I heard them. I'm not lying. Please." Viktor's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. The fork clattered to the floor. For 5 seconds, he simply looked at her. Really looked at the tears, the shaking, the absolute terror of someone facing death not from guilt but from trying to do the right thing. "She's not lying," he said quietly. He released her wrist, pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, monogrammed, silk, and handed it to her. "Wipe your face." Lina obeyed, hands still shaking. The handkerchief came away, stained with mascara and tears. Viktor stood, buttoning his suit jacket with precise movements. "Dmitri, take the food to Carson's lab. Full toxicology panel. I want results in 2 hours." He turned to Alexei. "Lockdown. No one leaves this building until we identify the 2 men at the bar. Review security footage. Kitchen staff, bartenders, busboys, interview everyone." "What about her?" Alexei gestured toward Lina. Viktor looked at her, small, bloodied, still clutching his handkerchief like a lifeline. "She stays with me. Boss, we don't know if... She warned me when she could have stayed silent. If she were part of the plot, that makes no sense." Viktor's voice carried absolute finality. "She's a witness now. That makes her a target. She stays under protection. Protection." The word sounded like a cage door slamming shut. Lina found her voice, small and raw. "I just want to go home." Viktor's expression softened barely, just a fraction. "Your home is the first place they'll look. You heard what you shouldn't have. You interfered with an assassination. That makes you a loose end." He paused. "I'm sorry. Your life just became very complicated." 2 hours later, Carson, a gaunt man with chemical stains on his lab coat, called with results. The sturgeon had been laced with thallium sulfate, a tasteless poison that caused slow organ failure over days. Painful. Untraceable until too late. The dose was expertly calibrated. Viktor set down the phone, looked at Lina sitting across from him in his private office, and said quietly, "You saved my life." She didn't feel like a hero. She felt like someone who'd just stepped into quicksand. The restaurant transformed into an interrogation site. Viktor's men moved with efficient brutality, separating staff into rooms, cross-referencing stories, checking backgrounds. The kitchen chef, Marcus Beaumont, a temperamental man who threw tantrums over plating, swore he'd personally prepared Viktor's dish. No one had touched it afterward. Then it was added after plating, Alexei concluded, between kitchen and table. Security footage revealed the 2 men had entered at 11:43, paid cash for drinks, and exited through the kitchen at 12:17, exactly 90 seconds after Lina dropped the wine bottle. Professional timing. They'd been monitoring the situation, ready to abort. Viktor watched the footage 5 times, memorizing faces, run them through databases, military, intelligence, criminal, international if necessary. Lina sat in a corner of the office, wrapped in a blanket someone had found, watching this unfold. The casual efficiency of Viktor's operation was terrifying. These men didn't call police or fill out reports. They operated in a parallel world with different rules. Viktor approached her, carrying a glass of water. "Drink." She took it, hands steadier now. Shock was giving way to exhaustion. Who were they? "That's what I intend to find out." He pulled a chair over, sat across from her, not looming but level. "Tell me again exactly what you heard. Every word, every inflection." Lina closed her eyes, reaching back. "Яд в его блюде. Сделай это медленно." She repeated it in Russian first, then translated. "Poison in his dish. Make it slow." And the dialect. "You're certain it was Kirov?" "Yes. My grandmother's generation spoke that way. The O sounds are rounder, almost swallowed. And they use zdele instead of zdilit, command form, military style. It's old-fashioned now. Most modern Russians don't speak like that." Viktor's eyes sharpened. Old-fashioned. Military. Kirov. He stood, paced to the window overlooking rain-soaked streets. Kirov Regiment. Disbanded in 1998 after corruption scandals. Some members went private mercenary work, contracted killings. He turned back. "I had dealings with them. 15 years ago. A business dispute over shipping routes in St. Petersburg. What happened? I won. They lost territory and revenue. 3 of their commanders died in the aftermath, not by my hand, but they blamed me anyway." His voice was matter-of-fact, as if discussing stock portfolios. "Apparently they hold grudges." Lina processed this. "So they waited 15 years for revenge?" "Revenge is a dish best served cold. Thallium poisoning would take days to kill me, during which time I'd suffer, and my organization would fracture trying to find the cause. It's elegant, in a savage way." He studied her. "And you prevented it because your grandmother taught you bedtime stories in Russian." Put that way, it sounded absurd. She laughed, a brittle, exhausted sound. "My grandmother used to say, Listen to what people say when they think no one understands. That's where truth lives. Viktor's expression shifted something almost like respect. Wise woman. She died 3 years ago. Lung cancer. I'm sorry. The words sounded genuine, which surprised her. She'd expected cold calculation from a man like him, not condolences about a grandmother he'd never meet. Dmitri entered, phone in hand. Boss. Facial recognition got a hit. The man with the neck tattoo is Gregor Volkov, former Kirov Regiment lieutenant. Last known location was Prague, working private security. The other one no match yet. Volkov. Viktor's voice went cold. He was there. Street Petersburg. He watched me burn their supply chain. He turned to Dmitri. Find him. Check private airfields, train stations, border crossings. He's still in the country. Men like him don't run before confirming the kill. As Dmitri left, Viktor returned his attention to Lina. You'll stay at my safe house tonight. Tomorrow we'll arrange more permanent protection. For how long? Until Volkov and his associate are dead or in custody. He saw her expression. I'm sorry. This isn't the life you chose, but it's the life you're in now. Lina thought of her tiny apartment in South Side, her online classes in computer science, her shift schedule at the restaurant. All of it felt impossibly distant, like someone else's life viewed through thick glass. Can I at least call my roommate? She'll worry. Viktor considered, then nodded. One call. No details. Tell her you're staying with a friend for a few days. She made the call brief, vague, hating the lie. Her roommate, Jess, a nursing student with conspiracy theories about everything, immediately sensed something wrong. Are you okay? You sound weird. I'm fine. Just needed some space. I'll explain later. After hanging up, Lina felt the weight of isolation settle like a stone. She'd just saved a man's life and lost her own in the process. Viktor must have read something in her face because he said quietly, For what it's worth, you did the right thing. Most people would have stayed silent. I stayed silent once before. The words escaped before she could stop them. My brother. In Moscow. I was 12. I watched men kill him and I did nothing. Viktor was quiet for a long moment. Then, You were 12. A child. Silence then was survival. His gray eyes held hers. Tonight, you were not silent. That takes a different kind of courage. It was the kindest thing anyone had said to her in years. She didn't trust it, couldn't afford to trust it, but some small wounded part of her wanted to believe it anyway. The safe house was a penthouse overlooking the river, all floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, and security systems that probably cost more than Lina's yearly tuition. Dmitri and another guard, a woman named Sonia with sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes, swept the premises before allowing Viktor and Lina inside. You'll take the guest room, Viktor said, gesturing down a hallway. Bathroom stocked. Sonia will bring clothes in the morning your size? Small. Everything's small. Lina tried for humor, but it came out flat. Get some sleep. We'll strategize tomorrow. She wanted to ask what there was to strategize. Either they found Volkov or they didn't, but exhaustion was winning. She retreated to the guest room, a space decorated in whites and grays that felt like sleeping inside a cloud. The bed was absurdly soft. She lay down fully clothed and was asleep within minutes. She dreamed of Nikolai. Her brother's face, forever 23, laughing at something she couldn't remember. Then the laugh cut off, replaced by darkness and gunshots, and her own paralyzed silence. She woke to daylight streaming through windows and the smell of coffee. In the kitchen, Viktor stood at the counter in jeans and a plain white shirt, the first time she'd seen him in anything other than a suit. It made him look almost human. He poured coffee without asking and slid a cup toward her. Sleep well? Nightmares. No point lying. But I slept. He nodded as if nightmares were expected. Perhaps in his world they were. Sonia arrived with shopping bags, jeans, shirts, undergarments, all in Lina's size. Bathroom's down the hall if you want a shower, the guard said, not unkindly. We move in 30 minutes. Move where? Secure location, Viktor answered. This penthouse is known to certain people. We won't stay long. The convoy left at 9 a.m., 3 black SUVs with bulletproof glass. Lina rode in the middle vehicle with Viktor and Sonia. The city slid past, familiar streets made alien by circumstance. They were 2 blocks from the highway when the first SUV exploded. The blast was a physical force, slamming into Lina's chest even through armored glass. The lead vehicle flipped, engulfed in orange flame. Their driver, a man named Felix with a scar on his jaw, cursed and swerved hard right into an alley. "Contact!" Sonia barked into her radio. "Ambush on 7th. Lead vehicle down." Gunfire erupted sharp cracks that shattered the morning. The rear windshield spiderwebbed as bullets struck. Felix accelerated, tires screaming. Lina was thrown against Viktor, who wrapped an arm around her, pressing her head down below the window line. "Stay down." The SUV careened through narrow alleys, garbage cans exploding under the wheels. More gunfire. Sonia returned fire through a gun port, face set in cold concentration. The smell of cordite and burnt rubber filled the vehicle. They burst onto a main street, sideswiped a taxi, and Felix gunned the engine. Behind them, 2 motorcycles with armed riders gave chase. "They knew the route," Viktor said, voice tight with controlled fury. Someone leaked. Felix took a hard left, then another right, weaving through traffic with reckless precision. One motorcycle lost control trying to follow, skidding into a parked car. The other kept coming. Sonia leaned out the window, fired 3 shots. The motorcycle's front tire exploded. The rider went down in a grinding slide of metal and flesh. Silence, except for Lina's ragged breathing and the engine's roar. Felix drove for another 20 minutes, taking random turns, doubling back, until Viktor was satisfied they weren't followed. They ended up at a warehouse in the industrial district, rusted metal siding, broken windows, the perfect place to disappear. Inside, Dmitri was already waiting with the 3rd SUV and its occupants. His face was grim. Lost Thompson and Marcus in the lead vehicle. Rodriguez is critical shrapnel wounds. Medics working on him now. Viktor's jaw tightened. Volkov? Had to be. Professional hit, military-grade explosives. They knew exactly where we'd be, which meant someone in Viktor's organization was compromised. Lina sat on a crate, arms wrapped around herself, trying to process what had just happened. People had died. She'd almost died, because she'd overheard 2 men in a restaurant. Viktor crouched in front of her, hands gentle on her shoulders. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. Couldn't speak. "Look at me." She did. His gray eyes were steady, grounding. "You're safe now. I won't let them reach you." "You can't promise that." Her voice cracked. "They just tried to kill us. Your own men are dead. How can you?" "Because I make it true." His voice carried absolute conviction. "You saved my life. I protect what's mine. You're under my protection now, which means Volkov has to go through me to reach you. And no one goes through me." It should have sounded arrogant. Instead, it sounded like an oath. Later, after Dmitri's team secured the warehouse and posted guards, Viktor stood at a window overlooking the rail yard. Lina approached quietly. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "I'm nobody, just a waitress who heard something. You could hand me over to the police. Let them deal with it." Viktor was silent for a moment. Then, "I had a daughter once, Katya. She'd be about your age now." "Had?" "She died when she was 7. Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light." His voice was carefully neutral, but pain leaked through the edges. "I wasn't there. I was in street. Petersburg, burning Volkov's supply chains, building my empire, making myself powerful so no one could hurt my family. And while I was doing that, a stranger killed my daughter." Lina's throat closed. "I'm sorry. When I look at you small, brave, trying to do the right thing in a world that punishes it, I see her, what she might have become." He turned to face her. "So, yes, I'll keep you safe. Not because you're nobody. Because you're somebody who deserves better than this." Before Lina could respond, Dmitri burst in. "Boss, Rodriguez didn't make it. Bled out 10 minutes ago." His expression was stone. But before he died, he said something. Said he saw Gregor Volkov 3 days ago, at the restaurant, talking to Gerald Finch, the restaurant manager. Viktor's expression went cold as winter steel. "Bring me Finch. Alive." Gerald Finch was brought to the warehouse at midnight, bound to a chair in a room lit by a single bare bulb. He was weeping before anyone even spoke, a small, broken man who'd made a very bad deal with very bad people. Lina watched from an adjacent room through one-way glass. Viktor had offered to keep her out of this, but she'd refused. She needed to understand. Viktor entered the interrogation room, pulled up a chair, and sat across from Finch with the patience of a confessor. "Tell me about Volkov." "I didn't know," Finch sobbed. "I swear I didn't know they'd try to kill you. They said they just wanted information when you'd be dining, what you ordered, your schedule. They paid me $50,000. I have debts, gambling debts. My wife doesn't know. I needed $50,000. Viktor's voice was soft, dangerous. You sold me for $50,000. I thought it was industrial espionage. Business rivals. I didn't know about poison, about killing. I would never. But you suspected. Viktor leaned forward. You knew I wasn't a businessman in the conventional sense. You've worked at Caviar and Steel for 7 years. You've seated me dozens of times. You knew what I was, and you still took their money. Finch's face crumpled. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. Was Volkov at the restaurant 3 days ago? Yes. He came in during lunch. Said he was scouting locations for a corporate event. We talked. He asked questions about our high-profile clientele. He was charming, professional. He gave me his card. Finch's voice was hollow. Then he called me that night. Said he knew about my debts. Knew my wife's name. My daughter's school. Said it would be easy money for harmless information. And you believed him. I wanted to believe him. Viktor stood, walked to the corner, and returned with a folder. He dropped it on the table. Gregor Volkov, former Kirov Regiment. 23 confirmed kills, mostly contract work. Specializes in poison, long-range assassination, and making death look like accidents. He flipped open the folder, revealing crime scene photos. This is what harmless information looks like when Volkov uses it. Finch vomited. Viktor waited until he finished. Where is he staying? I don't know. He never said. He'd call from different numbers, always blocked. What about his associate? The man with the buzz cut? Never met him. Only Volkov. Viktor studied Finch for a long moment. Then, to Dmitri, he's telling the truth. Mostly. What do you want done with him? Lina expected Viktor to order execution men like Finch were loose ends, liabilities. Instead, Viktor said, drop him at the Canadian border. Give him $500 and a fake ID. Tell him if he ever returns, he dies. If he speaks to anyone about this, his family dies. Finch's eyes went wide. You're letting me go? I'm giving you a chance your greed doesn't deserve. Don't waste it. Viktor turned away, dismissing him. Get him out of my sight. After Finch was removed, Lina entered the interrogation room. Why did you let him live? Because killing him serves no purpose. He's pathetic, not evil. He made a stupid choice out of desperation. Viktor's expression was unreadable, and because Katya would have wanted mercy. It was the first time Lina had heard him reference his daughter's wishes, as if her ghost still guided his decisions. They returned to the main warehouse space, where Sonia had set up a makeshift living area, cots, a hot plate, supplies. It felt like a military encampment. Viktor's men moved with quiet efficiency, checking perimeters, rotating watch. Lina couldn't sleep. She sat on her cot, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant sounds of trains. Viktor appeared with 2 cups of tea mint, hot, sweet. He handed her one and sat on a crate nearby. They drank in silence for a while. My grandmother used to make tea like this, Lina said quietly. When I had nightmares about Nikolai. Tell me about him. So she did. About Nikolai's laugh, his terrible jokes, the way he'd taught her chess on a board missing half its pieces. About the night he'd seen a politician taking bribes, how he'd tried to report it, how that decision had killed him. About hiding behind a dumpster, 12 years old, watching her brother die. We left Moscow 2 weeks later. My mother, my grandmother, and me. Refugee visas. We rebuilt in Boston. But I never stopped hearing the gunshot. Viktor listened without interruption. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, walked to an old upright piano against the far wall out of place in the industrial space, probably left by a previous tenant. He sat, tested the keys. Some were out of tune, but most worked. He began to play a Russian lullaby, slow and mournful. Lina recognized it immediately. Spi, moya radost, usni. Sleep, my joy. Sleep. Her grandmother had sung it to her after the nightmares. Tears came then, hot and unstoppable. Not from fear or trauma, but from recognition that she and this dangerous man, from opposite sides of every possible divide, had been shaped by the same language, the same losses, the same ghosts. When the last note faded, Viktor's hands rested on the keys. My mother played this for Katya every night. I was never home to hear it. After Katya died, my wife left me. Said I'd chosen power over family. She wasn't wrong. Do you regret it? Every day. His voice was raw. But regret doesn't bring them back. So I do what I do, and I live with the cost. They sat in the warehouse darkness, two broken people united by whispers and poison and the weight of the dead, and for a moment, just a moment, the world felt a little less cold. The warehouse became their fortress for 3 days, while Viktor's intelligence network hunted Volkov. Leads came and went: a sighting in Brooklyn, a contact in Philadelphia, rumors of a flight to Toronto. All dead ends. Volkov was a ghost, and ghosts didn't leave tracks. On the third night, Viktor called a meeting at a neutral location, an upscale hotel's private dining room. His lieutenants from across the city were summoned to discuss strategy and consolidate operations disrupted by the assassination attempts. Lina stayed at the warehouse with Sonia, but Viktor took her phone number and encrypted line he'd given her. If anything feels wrong, call immediately. The meeting convened at 8 p.m. 10 men around a table, Viktor's inner circle. Lawyers, logistics, coordinators, money men. They discussed territory disputes, shipment schedules, political bribes, the machinery of an empire. Lina tried to focus on the book. Sonia had brought her a thriller, ironically, but couldn't concentrate. Something felt off, though she couldn't articulate what. A pressure in the air, like weather turning. At 9:30, her encrypted phone rang. Viktor. Lina, I need you to listen carefully. Don't ask questions, just listen. His voice was controlled, but she heard tension beneath. Okay. During the meeting, wine was served. Several people began drinking. I noticed something. The server, a young man named Paul, spoke to one of my lieutenants, Raymond Carter, in Russian. Very quietly. I heard only fragments, but the accent. Kirov, Lina breathed. I didn't drink, neither did Dmitri. But Carter did. He finished his glass. A pause. Then he poured for 2 others. They drank. It's happening again. Yes, but this time I knew to listen. You taught me that. His voice hardened. Stay where you are. I'm handling this. The line went dead. Lina stood, pacing. Sonia watched her with sharp eyes. What did he say? They're trying again. The poison. At the meeting. Sonia cursed, reached for her radio. But before she could call it in, the warehouse's main door exploded inward. 3 men in tactical gear burst through, weapons raised. Sonia drew and fired in one smooth motion, dropping the first. The second returned fire. Rounds sparked off concrete. Lina dove behind a crate, heart hammering. Sonia moved like liquid violence, shooting, ducking, using cover with professional precision. She dropped the second man. The third retreated, and Sonia pursued. Then a 4th man appeared from a side entrance, buzz cut, military bearing, Volkov's associate from the restaurant. He shot Sonia twice in the chest. She fell. Lina screamed. Buzzcut turned toward her, weapon rising. A gunshot cracked. He stumbled, blood blooming on his shoulder. Another shot. He went down. At the warehouse entrance stood Viktor, gun still raised, face carved from rage and focus. Behind him, Dmitri and 3 other guards poured in, securing the space. Viktor moved to Sonia, checked her pulse. Vest caught it. She's alive. Get the medic. Then he was at Lina's side, checking her for injuries. Are you hurt? She shook her head, unable to speak. The meeting was a trap. Carter was compromised. Volkov had leverage on him, probably for months. He poisoned the wine, tried to distribute it to as many targets as possible. We caught it because you taught me to listen. Viktor's hands were steady on her shoulders. Carter's dead. Poisoned himself when he realized we knew. Professional to the end. And the server? Paul? In custody. He'll talk. Buzzcut was still alive, bleeding but conscious. Viktor crouched beside him, voice cold as death. Where is Volkov? The man laughed, wet, painful. You think? He tells us. We're just contractors. Paid to create chaos. He's gone by now. Could be anywhere. Then you're worthless. Viktor stood, aimed his weapon. Wait. The man's eyes went wide. I can give you something. A number. Emergency contact. For if the job went wrong. Viktor considered, then lowered his gun. Talk. The man recited a phone number with a Prague prefix. Scrambled line. But it reaches him. That's all I have. Swear on my mother's grave. Viktor had Dmitri record the number, then had the man taken for interrogation. Professional courtesy, he'd kept his word, so he'd live. For now. Later, after medics had stabilized Sonia and the warehouse was secured, Viktor and Lina sat in the small office space. He looked exhausted, first time she'd seen cracks in his armor. "They keep coming," Lina said quietly. "How do we stop this?" "We find Volkov, and we end it." Viktor's voice carried grim finality. "No more half measures. No more defense. We go on offense." "How?" "I call the number. I offer him what he wants." "Which is?" Viktor looked at her. "Me. Face to face. Single combat. Old rules. It's what men like Volkov respect, direct confrontation. No proxies. He's been trying to kill me from the shadows. If I challenge him openly, he'll accept. His pride won't allow otherwise. That's suicide. It's ending the threat. To me, to you, to everyone in my organization." He leaned forward. "You saved my life once. Let me save yours now. Properly." Lina wanted to argue, but she saw the determination in his eyes. He'd made his decision before ever explaining it to her. This was who he was, a man who protected his own no matter the cost. "When?" she asked. "Tomorrow. I'll make the call tonight. Arrange the meeting. Old docks, neutral ground, dawn." He paused. "You'll stay here, under guard. When it's over, one way or another, Dmitri will take you somewhere safe. New identity, new life. Volkov's network will fracture without him. You'll be free. And if you lose, then I'll have died doing something worthwhile." He smiled, sad, genuine. "Better than most in my profession get." That night, Viktor made the call. Lina listened from the doorway as he spoke in Russian, his voice carrying formal challenge. She caught enough to understand. "Gregor Volkov, this is Viktor Petrov. You want me dead? Face me yourself. Tomorrow, dawn, pier, 17. Bring whoever you want. I'll bring no one. We end this the old way." A pause. Then Volkov's voice, tinny through the speaker, agreeing. The line went dead. Viktor stood, saw Lina watching. "It's done. You're really going alone?" "I have to. Those are the terms. If I bring men, he'll consider it dishonorable and disappear again. But if I go alone, he'll be there. Men like him can't resist the poetry of it." "That's insane." "Probably." He walked to the piano, played a few notes of the lullaby. But sometimes insanity is the only sane response. Lina crossed the room, stood beside him. On impulse, surprising herself, she put her hand over his on the keys. "Don't die." He looked at her hand, then her face. Something shifted in his expression, surprise, warmth, something almost like hope. "I'll do my best." For a moment, in the quiet warehouse with the ghosts of music between them, they were just two people trying to survive a world that wanted to devour them. Then the moment passed, and reality returned. Viktor's private villa sat on a cliff overlooking the sea, a fortress disguised as a home. He insisted on moving there for the final night, claiming the warehouse was compromised. In truth, Lina suspected he wanted her somewhere beautiful before the end. The villa was stunning stone and glass, minimalist elegance, waves crashing far below. Sonia, recovered enough to insist on duty despite cracked ribs, maintained perimeter watch with 4 other guards. Inside, it was just Viktor and Lina. "You'll stay here after tomorrow," Viktor said, showing her to a guest room with ocean views. "The property's in a trust under a false name. Even if Volkov had accomplices, they won't find it. You'll be safe." "For how long?" "As long as you need." She wanted to ask what happened if he didn't come back, but couldn't voice it. Instead, "Can I see where you practice?" He raised an eyebrow. "Practice? You're going into single combat tomorrow. You must train somewhere." A slight smile. Observant. He led her downstairs to a basement-range shooting gallery, training mats, weapons rack. The walls were scarred from years of use. "I train every day. Muscle memory. In combat, thought gets you killed. Only instinct survives." He pulled a handgun from the rack, Glock 19, standard issue. "Have you ever fired one?" "No." "Want to learn?" It seemed absurd learning to shoot the night before he might die, but Lina nodded. Maybe she needed to feel less helpless. Maybe he needed to teach someone something good before walking into darkness. Viktor was a patient instructor. He showed her stance, grip, sight alignment, let her dry fire until muscle memory began forming. Then, with ear protection on, He stood behind her and guided her through live rounds. The recoil shocked her. The noise, even muffled, felt like thunder. But after 10 rounds, she hit the target twice. Small victories. Not bad, Viktor said. Natural steadiness. You don't flinch. I've seen worse than gunfire. I know. He took the weapon, cleared it, set it aside. That's why you'll survive all this. Survivors recognize each other. They moved to the training mats. Viktor showed her basic self-defense, how to break grabs, where to strike, how to use an attacker's momentum. His touch was professional, impersonal, but Lina felt the leashed power in him. This man was a weapon. After an hour, they stopped. Both were breathing hard, sweat damp. Lina felt more alive than she had in days. "Thank you," she said, "for teaching me. You saved my life. It's the least I can do." "Why do you keep saying that? You've repaid that debt 10 times over. You've kept me alive, given me shelter, risked your men. You don't owe me anything anymore." Viktor was quiet for a moment, then sat on the mat, back against the wall. Lina joined him. "When Katya died, he began slowly. I felt nothing. Not for months. I attended her funeral like a stranger, comforted my wife with empty words, returned to work as if nothing had changed. People said I was strong. I wasn't strong. I was hollow." He stared at his hands. Then one day, maybe a year later, I was walking past a playground. I heard a little girl laughing, really laughing, that pure sound children make, and something in me broke. I stood there and wept like an animal. All the grief I'd buried came up at once. A stranger called the police, thought I was dangerous. Lina didn't speak, just listened. After that, I started feeling again. Pain, yes, but also other things. Music, sunlight, the taste of food. He looked at her. "You reminded me what it means to do something good, to save instead of destroy. That feeling that maybe I'm not beyond redemption is worth protecting. That's why I keep saying it." Lina's throat tightened. "I'm not your redemption, Viktor. I'm just a girl who heard the wrong conversation. You're more than that. You chose courage when silence was safer. You represent everything I've spent 15 years destroying in myself." His voice dropped. "Tomorrow, when I face Volkov, I'm not fighting for territory or pride. I'm fighting for the idea that maybe, just maybe, I can be someone my daughter wouldn't be ashamed of." Before Lina could respond, he stood, offered his hand to help her up. "Come, I want to show you something." He led her upstairs to a music room she hadn't seen before. The piano here was a grand, immaculately maintained. Sheet music covered the stand. He sat, gestured for her to join him. Katya was learning piano before she died. She'd just started this piece. He played halting, simple, a child's melody. "I've been trying to finish it for 7 years. Can't get the ending right." Lina listened to the incomplete tune, felt its yearning. "Play what you have." He did. The melody wandered, searching, until it simply stopped, unresolved. "That's where I always get stuck," Viktor said. Lina reached over, played 3 notes, an echo of the opening, but in a minor key. Resolution through reflection. Viktor stared at the keys, then played the full piece with her ending. The final chord hung in the air, bittersweet but complete. "That's it," he said quietly. "That's what I couldn't find." They sat in silence, the music fading into memory. Later, they ate dinner on the terrace, simple pasta, salad, wine. They talked about small things, books, favorite seasons, places they wanted to see. Ordinary conversation, the kind people have when pretending tomorrow isn't full of guns and death. As night deepened, Lina felt the weight of what was coming. "Will you come back?" Viktor met her eyes. "I don't know. Volkov's good. I'm good. It's a coin flip." "That's not comforting. I'm not going to lie to you. Not now." He refilled her wine glass. "But I promise you this. Whether I come back or not, you'll be taken care of. Dmitri has instructions. Money, documents, contacts. You'll never have to serve tables in dangerous restaurants again. I don't want money. I want..." She stopped, unsure how to finish. "What?" "I want you to come back." The words surprised her, but they were true. "You're the first person since my grandmother who's made me feel like I matter. Not as a victim or a witness, but as me. I don't want to lose that." Viktor's expression softened. He reached across the table, took her hand. "You matter, Lina Hartwell. You've always mattered. The world just didn't show you until now." They stayed like that, hands clasped, ocean wind carrying salt and stars, until Dimitri's voice crackled over the intercom. "Boss, it's time." Dawn was 2 hours away. Viktor left at 4 a.m., Dimitri and 2 guards accompanying him to the docks. He'd refused more security, the terms were clear. Lina watched from the villa's terrace as the black SUV disappeared into pre-dawn darkness. Sonia approached, still moving carefully from her injuries. "He'll be okay. Viktor Petrov doesn't lose. Everyone loses eventually. Not today." Sonia's conviction was absolute. "I've known him 12 years. He's survived worse. Trust me." Lina wanted to. Instead, she returned to her room, tried to sleep, failed. At 5 a.m., she gave up and made coffee in the kitchen. The villa felt too large, too empty. Ghosts of conversation echoed in the silence. At 5:30, Sonia's radio crackled. "Perimeter breach. North side. 3 contacts." Sonia's hand went to her weapon. "Stay behind me." But before they could move, the lights died. Emergency backup should have kicked in, it didn't. Someone had cut the power properly. Through the windows, Lina saw muzzle flashes. Gunfire, suppressed but audible. Sonia pushed her toward a panic room Viktor had shown them, reinforced door, separate oxygen, communication equipment. They almost made it. A man appeared in the hallway, tall, gray-haired, carrying military bearing like a second skin. Gregor Volkov. "Miss Hartwell," he said in lightly accented English. "We meet at last." Sonia raised her weapon. Volkov was faster. 2 shots. Sonia went down. Lina ran. She made it 10 feet before arms caught her another man. Massive, smelling of gun oil and sweat. She fought, kicking, clawing, screaming. A cloth pressed over her mouth, chemical sweetness, the world tilting, darkness. She woke in motion. Vehicle. Hands zip-tied behind her back. Mouth taped. Her head pounded, vision blurry. Across from her sat Volkov, watching with clinical interest. "You cost me a great deal," he said conversationally. "Time, money, men. All because you overheard something you shouldn't have. If you'd stayed quiet, none of this would have been necessary." Lina tried to speak through the tape. Failed. Viktor Petrov was supposed to die in that restaurant. Slow, painful, mysterious. His organization would have fractured searching for the cause. We would have reclaimed our territory. Simple, elegant. Volkov leaned forward. "But you interfered. A tiny waitress with big ears. Now we must adapt." The vehicle stopped. They were at the docks. She could smell salt water and hear waves. Dawn light filtered through grimy windows. Volkov pulled her out. The dock was old, abandoned, pilings rotted and listing. At the far end, Viktor stood alone, silhouetted against rising Sunday. "A change of plans," Volkov called across the water. "Single combat was the agreement, but I've decided to adjust the terms." Lina felt cold metal against her temple, a gun barrel. "Walk away, Petrov. Leave now, and she lives. Stay, and she dies before you do." Viktor didn't move. Even at this distance, she could see his expression carved from stone in fury. "She's not part of this. She became part of this when she warned you. Now she's leverage." Volkov's voice was almost amused. "You've gone soft, old friend. The Viktor I knew wouldn't have cared about one girl. But you've made her your weakness. And weakness is always exploited. Let her go. Fight me. This was about honor. Honor is for the dead. I prefer victory." Volkov pressed the gun harder against Lina's skull. "Turn around. Walk away. Live another day." Viktor's hand hovered near his weapon, a draw he couldn't complete before Volkov fired. Classic hostage stalemate. Then Lina remembered. The training. Viktor's words. "In combat, thought gets you killed. Only instinct survives." She dropped her full weight suddenly, turning into dead weight in Volkov's grip. Surprised, he stumbled. The gun moved from her temple. Viktor drew and fired in one motion 3 shots, center mass. Volkov fell backward. Lina scrambled away, still zip-tied. Behind Volkov, 4 more men appeared from shipping containers, the backup he'd promised not to bring. Gunfire erupted. Viktor dove behind concrete pilings. Rounds sparked off metal. He returned fire with brutal efficiency, dropping 1 man, wounding another. But the odds were wrong. Lina's hands worked frantically at the zip ties, wrists burning. The tape over her mouth made breathing hard. Panic threatened, she forced it down. "Think. Remember. The concrete. Rough edge on a broken piling. She scraped the zip tie against it. Again, hands slick with blood. The plastic frayed, snapped. Free. She ripped off the mouth tape, gasped air. Near her, one of Volkov's men lay dead. His weapon dropped. She grabbed the gun heavy, unfamiliar. Hands shaking. Stance. Grip. Sight alignment. Viktor was pinned down, outnumbered. One of Volkov's men circled, trying for a clean shot. Lina raised the weapon. Fired. The recoil shocked through her, just like at the range. The round went wide. She adjusted, fired again. This time she hit shoulder. Not fatal, but the man went down screaming. Viktor used the distraction. Rose, fired twice. The remaining shooter fell. Silence, except for waves and distant sirens. Viktor ran to her, checked her for injuries. You shot someone. You taught me how. Not well enough to matter in combat. Well enough to distract. She was shaking, adrenaline crashing. Is Volkov? Dead. Finally. Viktor pulled her close. Not romantic, but protective. Survivor to survivor. It's over. Dmitri and reinforcements arrived minutes later. They found Sonia a live vest had caught one bullet. The other had been a graze. Lucky twice. The villa's other guards had fought off the assault team, killing 3. Volkov's network would collapse without him. The threat was ended. As dawn fully broke, painting the docks gold and red, Lina and Viktor sat on a concrete barrier, waiting for cleanup crews. Both were blood-stained, exhausted, alive. You were supposed to stay in the panic room, Viktor said. You were supposed to have single combat at dawn. Plan change. They do. She leaned against his shoulder, a gesture of exhaustion. Not affection, but it felt right somehow. What happens now? Now, you heal. You rest. You decide what kind of life you want. Viktor's voice was quiet. The new identity is still yours if you want it. Or you stay. Work for me not as a waitress, but as someone I trust. Someone who hears what others miss. You're offering me a job in organized crime? I'm offering you a choice. For the first time in a long time you have one. Lina thought about her apartment, her classes, her ordinary life, then thought about the music room, the training, the feeling of mattering, of being seen. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. Viktor stood, offered his hand. Come on, let's go home. Home. The word felt strange and perfect. They walked toward the waiting vehicles, sunrise at their backs, carrying their ghosts together into whatever came next. 3 weeks passed like a held breath. Volkov's death fractured his network, leaderless mercenaries scattering, contracts unfulfilled, territories abandoned. Viktor's intelligence confirmed no remaining threats targeted Lina. She was, finally, safe. The villa became a strange liminal space. Not quite a home, not quite a prison. Lina healed physically. The cuts and bruises faded. Emotionally, the nightmares persisted. But now Viktor was there, playing piano in the night, and somehow that helped. They fell into routines. Morning coffee on the terrace, afternoon walks along the cliff path, evening meals where they talked about everything except the violence that had bound them. It felt like borrowed time, beautiful and temporary. Viktor's empire demanded his attention, meetings, phone calls, decisions that shaped the city's underworld. But he carved out hours for Lina, teaching her things his daughter would never learn: how to read people, negotiate leverage, navigate dangerous rooms. Skills that had nothing to do with crime, and everything to do with survival. You're too smart to waste serving tables, he said during one lesson. You could do anything. Business, law, intelligence work. You have a gift for reading situations. My gift got me into this mess. Your gift saved both our lives. That's not a mess. That's power. He studied her. The question is what you want to do with it. She didn't have an answer. Her old life felt distant: classes, shifts, the tiny apartment with Jess. But this new life felt impossible to sustain. Eventually, Viktor would have to return fully to his world, and she couldn't follow him there. On the 20th day, he made arrangements. I've secured documents, Viktor said over breakfast. New identity. Sarah Mitchell, 23. Born in Oregon. College transcripts, work history, references all legitimate looking. A trust fund in that name, managed by my lawyers. You'll never need to worry about money. Lina set down her coffee. You're saying goodbye. I'm saying you're free. Volkov's gone, His networks collapsed. You can have any life you want now. What if I don't know what I want? Then explore until you do. His voice gentled. You don't belong in my world, Lina. You're too good for it. Too honest. Eventually, proximity to me would corrupt that. I won't let that happen. That's not your choice to make. It is when I'm the danger. Viktor leaned forward. I've spent 3 weeks falling in. He stopped, recalibrated. I've grown attached. To you, to this routine, to the fantasy that I could be someone other than what I am. But fantasy ends. Reality remains. I'm a criminal. I hurt people. You saved me, and I'm grateful. But the kindest thing I can do is let you go. Lina felt tears threatening. So that's it? You just decided? I decided you deserve better than a life in the shadows. You deserve normal, boring, safe. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. Plane ticket to Seattle. Tomorrow morning. Fresh start. College is already arranged if you want it. Or travel. Or nothing. Just live. She took the envelope with numb hands. Inside. Sarah Mitchell's documents, the ticket, a bank card. Everything needed to disappear. Will I see you again? Viktor's expression was carefully neutral. I don't think that's wise. I didn't ask if it was wise. I asked if I'd see you. A pause. Probably not. It shouldn't have hurt they'd known each other a month, most of it under duress. But it did hurt, like losing something she'd never quite had. That night, Viktor played piano. The completed song, the one Lina had helped finish. She listened from the doorway, memorizing the melody, trying to capture this moment before it dissolved. When he finished, she approached. I have something for you too. She handed him a folded paper sheet music she'd transcribed. The lullaby, Spi, Moja radost, usni, arranged for piano with her own harmonic variations. She'd worked on it secretly, using the villa's music room when he was in meetings. Viktor unfolded it, studied the notation. His throat worked. This is beautiful. So you remember that not everyone you touch turns to ash. He looked at her, then really looked, with something raw and unguarded in his expression. I won't forget you. Good. She stepped closer, rose on tiptoes, kissed his cheek. Don't eat alone, Viktor Petrov. That's my only rule. The airport was small, private, one of Viktor's assets. Dmitri drove, Viktor sitting beside Lina in silence. The hour-long drive felt both endless and too brief. At the terminal, Dmitri took her luggage, 2 suitcases Viktor's people had packed with clothes, books, essentials. Everything needed for Sarah Mitchell's life. Viktor walked her to security. Neutral ground, the place where his world ended and hers began. The lawyers will contact you quarterly, he said. If you need anything, I'll be fine. I know you will. A slight smile. You're a survivor. So are you. They stood awkwardly, 2 people who'd been through war together now forced into civilian goodbye. Finally, Viktor extended his hand formally. Lina took it, held it. Thank you. For everything. Thank you for the music. His grip tightened briefly. And for reminding me what I was fighting for. She wanted to say more. Wanted to ask him to abandon his empire. Come with her, build something clean. But fairy tales ended with happily ever after. Real life was messier, more honest. She released his hand, picked up her carry-on, walked toward security without looking back because if she looked back, she'd lose her nerve. She heard his footsteps retreating. Heard the terminal door close. Gone. At the gate, waiting for boarding, she opened her carry-on to organize. Inside, tucked between clothes, she found something that hadn't been there before. A small box, wooden, with intricate carving. She opened it. Inside, the silk handkerchief he'd given her that first night, cleaned and pressed. And beneath it, a note in precise handwriting. Some debts can never be repaid. Some people should never be forgotten. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, the music room will be waiting. V. Lina traced the words, smiling through tears. The flight attendant called for boarding. Sarah Mitchell stood, shouldered her bag, and walked toward her new life carrying the weight of an old one lighter than it should be, but somehow exactly right. 1 year later, the cafe overlooked Lisbon's harbor, small, cozy, with mismatched furniture and walls covered in local art. The sign above the door read Refugio in hand-painted letters. Refuge. Sarah Mitchell, she'd grown into the name, made it hers, poured espresso with practiced ease. The cafe had been open 6 months, funded by careful investment of Viktor's trust. She'd hired local staff, learned Portuguese, built something real. Mornings were busy commuters grabbing coffee, students camping with laptops. Afternoons slowed, became contemplative. Evenings, she closed early, walked along the Tagus River, watched ships navigate ancient waters. Her life was quiet, normal, boring, as Viktor had promised. She liked it. Some nights, she still dreamed of gunfire and poison. But most nights, she dreamed of music, incomplete melodies searching for resolution. She'd enrolled in conservatory classes, learning composition. Turned out she had a talent for it. On this particular morning Monday, gray and soft with early rain, the cafe was nearly empty. Just one customer, sitting in the corner booth with untouched tea, dark suit, newspaper obscuring his face. He'd been there an hour, silent. Sarah wiped down the counter, sneaking glances. Something familiar in his posture, the way he held the newspaper too still, too controlled. The radio played Portuguese fado, melancholy and sweet. She hummed along, reaching for a pastry to offer as a sample to a regular. When she turned back, the corner booth was empty. The tea remained, barely touched. But on the counter, left precisely where she'd spotted, a folded napkin. Her heart stopped. She picked it up with trembling hands, unfolded it. Inside, written in that precise handwriting she'd memorized. Still listening? Sarah looked toward the door, a figure in dark coat disappearing into Lisbon drizzle. Tall, gray-streaked hair, familiar gait. She ran outside, but the street was empty. Tourists with umbrellas. A taxi turning the corner. Morning crowds absorbing ghosts. She stood there, rain dampening her hair, the napkin clutched in her fist. For a year, she'd told herself that chapter was closed. That Viktor Petrov was a memory, dangerous and beautiful and gone. That she'd moved on, built something new, became someone else. But standing in Lisbon rain, holding a napkin with 3 words, she realized some chapters never closed. They just waited. She returned to the cafe, locked the door, flipped the sign to Fachado. Closed. In the back office, she pulled out the wooden box she'd kept hidden in a drawer, the handkerchief, the note, and one more item she'd never mentioned. A business card with no name, just a phone number embossed in silver. When you're ready. She'd never called, never intended to. But her hand reached for her phone anyway. The number rang twice before connecting. No greeting, just breathing. "It's me," she said quietly. A pause. Then Viktor's voice, warm and careful. "Hello, Sarah Mitchell. Why are you in Lisbon?" "Business. Always business." A slight smile in his voice. "And maybe to see a cafe I'd heard good things about. Excellent espresso, they say. You didn't drink your tea." "I don't like tea. I came for the atmosphere." She laughed, soft, real. "Are you staying?" "That depends." "Am I welcome?" Sarah looked around her cafe, the life she'd built, the safety she'd found. Then at the wooden box, at proof that some connections couldn't be severed by distance or time. "The music room," she said. "Is it still waiting?" "Always. I'm not going back to that life. The violence, the danger. I can't. I'm not asking you to." Viktor's voice was gentle. "I've been restructuring. Legitimate businesses, legal operations. It's slow, complicated. But I'm trying to become someone who deserves." He stopped. "Someone better. For who?" "For myself. And maybe for a girl who taught me to listen when no one else was speaking." Sarah closed her eyes. Thought of Nikolai, of her grandmother, of all the people she'd lost and the ones she'd found, of music rooms and Russian lullabies and the strange poetry of poison and salvation. "I finish work at 7, she said. "There's a restaurant near Praça do Comércio. Pequeno Rei. Meet me there. We'll talk." "Just talk?" "Just talk. I'm not promising anything else." "Fair enough." She could hear his smile. 7 o'clock. I'll be the one not eating alone." The line disconnected. Sarah set down the phone, looked at the napkin still in her hand. Still listening? Always. She opened her laptop, pulled up a composition she'd been working on, a piano piece that had frustrated her for months, lacking its final movement. She'd called it incomplete. Now, fingers flying across the keys in her mind, she heard it. The resolution. The ending that had been there all along, waiting for the right moment to arrive. She began transcribing, notes flowing like conversation, question and answer, tension and release, 2 melodies intertwining until they became inseparable. When she finished, she titled the piece properly, Susurros e Respostas, Whispers and Answers. Outside, Lisbon moved through its morning rhythms. Rain turned to mist. Ships navigated toward open sea. And in a small cafe called Refuge, a girl who'd once been terrified and nameless sat writing music that spoke of survival and second chances and the strange grace of being truly heard. At 7 o'clock that evening, she'd walk into Pequeno Rey and find Viktor Petrov waiting, no longer just the dangerous man she'd saved, but someone who'd chosen redemption over convenience. They'd talk about music and memory and whether two people shaped by violence could build something gentle. Maybe it would work. Maybe it wouldn't. But for the first time in her life, Sarah Mitchell, once Lina Hartwell, wasn't afraid of the answer. She was too busy listening.